Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Great to have you as always. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kyiv, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, guys. Glad to be here as well.
Great. Ivan, you have a movie for us to watch, and let's start with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, a really sad movie, but let's watch it.
Let's watch it for what it is.
We are working towards Vuhledar. These people who simply claw onto this land, you can say it's like a second home for us. I feel sorry about the city. That's it.
Dear viewers, we have finally arrived in Vuhledar, and this is not the state I wanted to see this city in. It's a complete ruin, but it's also a symbol of resilience of the Ukrainian troops, as the soldiers of 72nd Brigade and other units have been holding the defense of the city for over 2 years. By now this ghost town has become their second home. Today we are lucky to talk to these heroes and find out how they are able to hold the defense of the city for so long.
To be honest, the city has changed a lot in terms of destruction over these last 2 years. When we first came here, there was a relatively good life, and people, many more civilians and houses were still intact. And then, quite quickly, it turned into such ruins.
Vuhledar was a small town founded on coal deposits, and before the full-scale war 15,000 people lived here. Most of them worked on 2 large coal mines. You can see what the city looks like now. There's 0 undamaged buildings, there's 0 intact windows, and these are the typical signs of Ruski Mir, the so-called Russian world. Just take a look what the Russian army is doing to Ukrainian cities. This applied not only to Vuhledar, but to all the cities around Ukraine. It is painful to see. Today Vuhledar looks a lot like Pripyat. I imagine that people, whole families lived in each apartment, whose fates were taken and chewed up by the war. A certain part of them ended here. In the yards, instead of living people, we see graves. The streets we move along are 2-3 kilometers from the closest enemy positions. We are in a strike zone of literally any weapon, be it a drone, mortar or air bomb. But we're lucky not to get shelled yet.
After their attempt last year to storm Vuhledar, they realized that it was difficult to do anything with such a fortified area, as the city is on high ground. So they changed their tactics. They just started launching aerial bombs, destroying all the buildings. They partly succeeded with this task.
The most intense phase of the battle for Vuhledar took place in the winter of 2022-23. During 1 week of these assaults, Ukrainian soldiers burned a record 130 heavy vehicles, 36 of which were tanks.
З такого, напевно, найбільш пам'ятного, якщо можна так сказати, то це був
The most memorable events, if I may say so, were the events in the winter of 22,
коли були спроби
when the enemy attempted to capture the town, to enter the town itself, and the enemy came quite close, literally 400 meters away.
залишалося, напевно, до міста. І навіть було
We even had to move our mortar launchers to other positions,
вогневі засоби, наші міномети.
simply because the minimum firing range did not allow us to target the enemy.
Стріляти, працювати по противнику.
П'ятий заряд, четвертий заряд, третій заряд.
Fifth charge, fourth, third, and then the first charge. And the sight is very even vertically, you can say. Mortar operators will understand what this means. Well, that is, by lowering the charge, you can aim at the target closer to you, and it's much more difficult. More things start flying in your direction in response.
But it's not just mortar launchers who are working to defend the city.
It's early morning in the south of the Donetsk region front, and the M777 crew is preparing to target Russian assault groups moving towards Vuhledar and around the city.
Every day, these men have work to do, mostly targeting infantry and armored groups who now choose to attack the city flanks. But for every shot, they get a retaliation.
The counter-battery fire is starting against us, so we are taking cover and waiting for the next orders.
О, все.
Хоть би в душ не попали. То все херня. Дальше. Прилетел. Це не чути був вихлоп.
You shoot, you get shot at. And for these men, it has been like that for 6 months. During all this time, the crew members only left this position to dig a new one.
Лячно, страшно завжди. Але ж
It's scary,
не дійсно.
always scary. But you hope they will miss. There's no other choice.
Although the defenders of Vuhledar have already been through a lot, now with fall of Marinka, the new possible attack direction is opening up, and this is the area right here behind me. It may be the third direction of the attack on the city, making it half surrounded.
I think they tried and failed. Maybe they have other plans now, you know? To go around from the other side and cut off the city just like that. Maybe so.
Vuhledar may seem like just a few words on blocks, a sight also common in this war. Yet, it stands as a crucial stronghold in the south of the Donetsk region. As global attention shifts toward the fronts, like the Kursk operation, it is vital to remember that the Donetsk region remains Russia's primary target. The endurance of Vuhledar's defenders will likely continue to be tested, as they face new threats, head-on.
Скільки часу ми тут пробули, скільки сил,
We've spent so much time here, given so much of our strength and health, and lost so many comrades. So just walking away from this city, from our positions, doesn't sit right. Neither our conscience nor our will allows it.
Яким чином вам вдається стримувати це місто настільки довго?
Плюс і в тому, що це
Well, there's a certain advantage geographically that this city is located at a height. There are some natural obstacles that are difficult for the enemy to overcome. But I think the biggest reason is the people who defend it. I can confidently say that I'm proud to serve in this unit with such people, because there are a lot of heroes. So first of all, I think that these people who simply claw onto this land, hold onto it in every possible way, making enormous, titanic efforts, fighting for every meter of their land.
за кожен той метр своєї землі.
Great video. Wow.
Very reminiscent starts to remind one of the First World War.
Yeah, what we see really, it's a picture of could be taken in the First World War, indeed. Except, well, we know that, of course, what they didn't show on this picture, there are drones, there are, of course, aviation and many other things. But in this clip particularly, that reminiscence of First World War. Interestingly enough, I saw a few Russian programs on the. It was long weekend, so I had unusually much more time than I usually have, and I was surprised that in such shows like Solovyov, for example, very well-known, esteemed movie producer Karen Shakhnazarov, well-known outside of Russia in Hollywood, for example. He said that he mentioned that Ukrainian fighters are absolute heroes and they are unique. They are the best in the world. And he said that on the first channel of Russian TV. Furthermore, he said that in what's happening now in Kursk and Kursk region, and there is no response from Russia, and it's difficult even to see what kind of response there could be when they have no additional troops available, never mind the weapons and so on. And he said something unique. Russia must be prepared to possibly lose this war on the first channel of Russian television. And it says Karen Shakhnazarov.
Now that is significant.
That's very significant. And you know what, Solovyov, even a few months ago, he would say, oh, just go away. I don't want to see you anymore, or so on. And he was very subdued. He didn't comment on that. That's incredible, really, to me. And
is he still alive?
yeah, that's next question.
Next important question.
Next question. Well, there were rumors.
Did he have the prolonged illness?
Yeah, he was served some tea with polonium after that.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, he had some tea. Yeah. But interestingly enough, there were rumors that Lavrov has passed away. And I had several calls. People called me, "Oh, did you hear that Lavrov is dead?" And I said, I never heard about that. So what do you think? Is he dead or alive?
In Ukraine, we are joking that unfortunately he will make several more useless speeches in United Nations till he will
until he realizes that he's dead.
No, my question.
I know. I thought you'd like that.
My question.
He doesn't realize that he's dead yet. He's still going on momentum.
Yes, he's waiting for his death. My question was, if he's dead, who is the beneficiary of his death? Because he couldn't just lie down and die. There must be something that led to his death. So who is the beneficiary?
Beneficiary is time, because he was so old, and he Putin is eternal president or Tsar of Russia. Lavrov was or is eternal head of Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think he was head of that ministry even during times of Yeltsin. So he's much more in power than the Putin himself is, and
almost reminds you of the role that Andrei Gromyko played during the Cold War, when he was practically almost an eternal fixture during the Cold War and of continuity.
He was a czar of foreign politics in Russia for a long time.
So this is very interesting. It's starting to remind me, if you want to put it in boxing terms, the Russians resemble a heavyweight fighter who has completely punched himself out, is exhausted, and is sort of standing there, open. He's been hit. He's been stunned by a counterpunch of the Ukrainian boxer, and now he's just sort of standing there dazed. And all the Ukrainians have to do is follow up with a good solid second punch, and it could be over.
Great. There are very controversial thoughts what I've heard in the last few days about continuation of the war and how long it's going to be, and all kind of speculation. And they're radically different from each other. So, okay, one line is that Russia is preparing a huge attack on Ukraine, most likely next year, sometimes at the beginning, first 3 months of 2025. And then people who are part of the conversation, the other side is asking, but attack with what? You cannot say we are going to attack. Okay, that's great. Okay, second question. What manpower you have available for the attack, and where are the weapons? Where are you going to get all that? So on. Now, the first part, who just talked about attack, they're becoming very subdued and saying that, well, that is hasn't been decided yet. It's still being worked out, but there is resources available or so on. The other side is asking, what resources? Where are they available? Show me. And they
Yeah, your point is well taken, Sasha. It kind of reminds you, if you want to flip this in reverse and look at the reverse situation that was occurring in the Second World War when Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The first year, you'll recall, in 1941, the German armies had offensives on all three sectors, three axes of attack, one going towards Leningrad, the other Second Army Group Center going towards Moscow, and then Army Group South going into Ukraine and the Caucasus, towards Ukraine and the Caucasus. Three sustained axes of attack. That is the only time during the Second World War that the Germans were able to do that. And they sustained significant losses in the winter counteroffensive near Moscow that the Russians put together. It was uncoordinated, but it effectively stopped the German advance. And then you note in 1942, the Germans weren't able to do that again. They were able to they had to pick which axis of advance they were going to emphasize, and they chose Stalingrad, to advance into the Caucasus and try to conquer the Caucasus and occupy the oil fields. When that failed and they were defeated in the Battle of Stalingrad, then finally in 1943, you have the gigantic, ironically enough, the Kursk salient, which the Germans tried to try to reduce in Operation Citadel. One offensive, one axis of attack, and and comparatively speaking in terms of scale and force, a limited axis of attack. Never mind, even though in the Battle of Kursk, there were Prochorovka, there were about 3,000 tanks involved. The largest tank battle in history, practically.
That's right.
But that was the last of the German strength. The Germans actually would have been better advised to simply go on defense, pull back, straighten the lines, try to negotiate a peace. But no, Hitler was too committed to trying to defeat the Soviet Union in the East, and he paid for it ultimately.
Yes, he did.
And so, but then now you're seeing this. You're saying the Russians, their offensives are becoming of less and less force, less and less significant. And if they talk about launching an offensive in early 2025 with against a galvanized NATO supporting Ukraine, and more high-quality weapons coming into the hands of the Ukrainians, that will be even better prepared to carry out a coordinated counterattack and even another counteroffensive. I just do not see the trends going in favor of the Russians, where the longer the war goes on, somehow the better the Russians are going to be. They've already gone through their highest quality troops. In nearly now, numbers of casualties are approaching 600,000. So,
but they continue to strike Ukraine, and when they can't show any great advantages on the battlefield, they are just striking Ukrainian cities, civilian infrastructure. We had a major strike on the Ukrainian energy system last week when Russia used more than 100 missiles and 100 drones. It was one of the biggest attacks during the whole Russian invasion, and Ukrainian energy infrastructure was severely damaged, and we had almost a nuclear catastrophe because they've targeted the the grid which distributed the energy from the nuclear power stations, and that grid was off, and Ukraine had to emergency shut down the nuclear reactors in order to prevent the nuclear catastrophe. And today, Russia struck an institute in the city of Poltava, and by that time, around 50 students are dead, and more than 200 people are injured. Another terroristic act of Russia. And of course, I agree with you, Jonathan, that NATO allies are providing Ukraine with weapons step by step, but at the same time, we are not allowing to use the long-range weapons on Russian territory to prevent them from attacking our cities, to destroy their planes on their air bases. The Poland and Romania, being members of NATO, are prohibited to shut down the Russian missiles, which are approaching borders of the Poland and Romania during the Russian strike. And NATO partners, especially United States, are against allowing Poland and Romania to shut down those missiles. And this is really a very strange war when Ukraine is fighting the very powerful opponent with great resources, but and Ukraine is given some help and resources, but is not allowed to use them in full power. And the conclusion is that probably for United States, for other Western countries, it's okay for this war to last as long as possible, because of what? I don't know why.
It seems to me either a very cynical calculation on the part of the West, which I would be embarrassed to admit to, or it is based upon a fear of escalation on the part of the West, which again I find mystifying, because the Russians haven't shown that they are capable of really carrying through with any kind of decisive escalation. What kind of escalation are they going to go to? Nuclear? Not unless they want to face a combined nuclear strike by all the nuclear forces of NATO, including the United States, which do in fact outnumber those of Russia.
Speaking about the nuclear threats, it's the most incredible thing that this really I find, trying to find the right words, but rather than stupid command of Russia, who for 2.5 years were threatening every 15 minutes to unleash nuclear weapons, and not only on Ukraine, but also on Paris and London and Berlin and everywhere else.
They're starting to sound like Khrushchev.
Yeah.
They're sounding like Khrushchev during the late 50s.
So there were so-called red lines, and okay, I understand the West was mindful of Putin unleash the nuclear weapons, and the West would still have quite unpleasant decision to make, whether to retaliate, and if retaliate, which is more likely, how to retaliate, conventional weapons or maybe nuclear as well, so on. So Putin himself killed all his red lines last week by saying that Russia is not going to use now these nuclear weapons, and he believes that conventional weapons would be more than enough to defeat Ukraine. Well, okay, you've done it for 2.5 years. Now it's been estimated that even in this attack now, when they concentrated all their best forces near Kharkov, they are making progress of about 100 meters a day. So they came to conclusion that if they ever will get Kyiv, it will take them 10.5 years. Okay, so now they're saying that's no longer truth. Now we're making 400 meters a day. having the considerable advantage in manpower and weapons and so on, they're making 400 meters a day. It's when you run on stadium 400 meters, you can imagine what is 400 meters. It's not such a great distance after all. So it means 2.5 days to make 1 kilometer, losing, by the way, about 1,500 people a day. So for 1 kilometer, you're going to lose 4,500 people. Oh my God, incredible.
Yeah, Russians now are approaching Pokrovsk city in Donetsk region, and this is the city of the same size as Bakhmut. And I've read analytics from that Royal Dutch Institute analyst, which video I showed you previously. And according to his analytics, Russians will take like from 6 months till 1 year to capture Pokrovsk while fighting within the city area. And they are now approaching it, but when the battle will be within the borders of the city, it will take much more long time from them to capture it entirely, and of course they will pay for it a really great price. But Russia captured Bakhmut because there was a Wagner group, Prigozhin, and those constant meat grinder when they throw more and more hordes in capturing Bakhmut. Now there is no Prigozhin. The Wagner group is not so numerous as it was before. And another question is where Russia will find resources to capture Pokrovsk in such kind of meat grinder attacks. I don't know actually.
Ivan, it's very good that you mentioned Wagner's group, because again, I was listening to one conversation between two Russian army commanders. So one, or not commanders, I should say, rather analysts. And one is saying that, asking a question, so you have still realistically 2 more months. So what do you think you will be able to achieve in September, October, say Pokrovsk, or what else? He says, no, it's not true. We can continue to work in November, December, practically all winter. The weather doesn't mean anything to us, because remember Bakhmut, we were fighting in Bakhmut heroically during the winter months. And the other guy says, but that was a Wagner group. It was not the Russian army. Whereas today, Wagner group, nobody knows. So that was a conversation.
Answer, Sasha. Answer is actually in another point, because that season of late autumn and the beginning of winter is not okay for offensive operations, because the armored vehicles are not able to cross the roads. There is a they're wet after the rains. There is mud, and the tanks even tanks are not able to cross them until the earth is frozen. But the answer is that Russians are not using armored vehicles. They're just using only soldiers without even without any cover, like from tanks or reps or some armored transporters. No, they're sending soldiers by foot, and of course, for soldiers who are going by foot, it doesn't matter whether it's mud, where there is dirt. If you can cross or can't cross, you just go by foot and die under the fire of Ukrainian defenders. The problem is that Russia still has a lot of soldiers. They have a lot of population which they can just send in this meat grinder. The bad point for Russia is that anyway, with such tactics, their population, their soldiers, will one day come to an end. And what Russia will do then? It will be a completely empty territory, populated only by women. But I will not be surprised if Russia will decide to mobilize women, and in one day, when they will not have enough men, they will mobilize women, give them those AKs, machine guns, and throw women in a meat grinder.
They did it during the second. They did it during the Second World War.
Yes, and don't forget, Ivan, one thing, that exactly 2 years ago, around September, Prigozhin, he was touring Russian jails and prisons, and he was selecting the fighters that he later on used in Bakhmut. Because in these conditions, what you just described, only prisoners could fight in these conditions. No normal person could endure that. That's one thing. Now, another thing is about Russia. You know what's happened in the last probably more than 20 years in Siberia? Siberia is absolutely, it was always depopulated, but now there are no men. They're all drunk or died or in prisons or simply impotence or just and this is Siberia. A lot of areas of Siberia is populated by Chinese men. They're moving in great numbers. And Russian women, they love Chinese men because they're hardworking men, and they're working, and all they need is a little bit of rice once a day. And there's no better husbands than Chinese men for Russian women. So that's probably going to happen westward and probably in Volga region. And then
it's an odd way. It's an interesting and innovative way to conquer a country, but
yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if in Kursk region you will see Chinese men pretty soon, quite a lot. So this is China's expansion into Russia, because people were saying that Russia is such a great country. What Chinese can do against us? Nothing, just move in and live with Russian women. That's all what they can do by now. And that's not so bad. So, and now, very interesting is that Russian public is getting now a little bit worried. They still don't understand what's happening. Putin's rating fell considerably. It was like 80% just a few months ago, and now it's slightly 53%, but a lot of people believe that his real rating is 30%, no more than that. And because of what's happened with the war, and now the Kursk region, although they are not trying to publicize it, you will not find it on the first page of newspaper, what's happening in Kursk. But people know in Russia, a lot of people, they connect it among themselves. A lot of them don't trust to state propaganda, and they're trying to find from each other, what have you heard? Or maybe you have some relatives there, and what did they say? And they're trying to find, Ivan, is that how things working in Russia most of the times, right?
Yeah, sure. For them it's okay, but what's next? Actually, you said that about Chinese getting to Kursk one day, but first of all, Russians will have to capture Kursk back. And now they're not putting any efforts. Ukraine is still advancing in Kursk region, and according to the latest reports from Ukrainian command, even more places in Kursk region were captured, and that the operation, President Zelensky said that operation is going according to the plan. Unfortunately, I don't know this plan. Nobody knows what the plan is. But one aspect of this plan, of course, was that Russia will put their forces from Donetsk region from the Eastern Front and bring them to Kursk in order to stop the advancing of Ukrainian forces. Instead of it, they've put forces from far away regions, like from Kaliningrad Oblast. They've created battalions of personnel from airfields and put them to the Kursk region. They've brought some battalions from Kherson and Zaporizhia region, but they're not taken their soldiers, their forces from the Donetsk region, which is not good for OK, but obviously it was not one of the it was just one of the several goals behind this operation. But one day, I hope Russia will have to capture these territories back, because it's first in history, actually, when a non-nuclear power captured the territories of a nuclear power. And
not a good look.
Yeah, and it's even against the Russian nuclear doctrine, because in their nuclear doctrine is said that they can use nuclear weapons if there is a threat for some part of Russian territory to be captured.
But it's not even really captured.
Yeah, a great power of Russian territory is captured. But what's next? They're bombing those territories. Actually, they're throwing air bombs on them. They're destroying their own cities and villages. Suja is being destroyed by their air bombs continuously, but they're not taking those territories back. And what's the plan? I don't know actually what's going on.
One thing very important happened. Russians learned a new word. The new word is Polyanitsa. And now they were talking also on these Russian talk shows. Polyanitsa is a new Russian drone, but it's super drone. It's very strong.
Ukrainian,
sorry. It's a very strong, it's very well done, and it has a very powerful mass that can destroy actually quite large objects. And so they learned, and they had even on Russian television a military expert who described Polyanitsa's range. It's about 500 kilometers, and the weight, and in great details. It's like I was surprised that he knows so much about Polyanitsa. And then another expert said that the Polyanitsa is nothing. They have now a new, very powerful weapon that can fly. It's a ballistic missile, actually, unlike Polyanitsa, that can now fly on 700 kilometers. And so now Ukraine doesn't need the Western permissions or so on, because they already have enough weapons to hit Moscow or any other targets in Russia. So how would you comment on that? That's really very interesting scenario. There was a question to you, Ivan. Are you able to read?
Yeah, actually, thank you for the question. The phenomenon behind the Prigozhin was that he was a very charismatic leader, and actually he had strong positions both across his own private army and also across the regular soldiers of regular Russian army. So of course, Putin and his fellows, they made conclusions after the Prigozhin rebellion, and they killed Prigozhin, and they've put all prominent battle officers who can repeat the rebellion from this war, because the present Russian war chiefs are not charismatic at all. They can't unite the Russian soldiers, and they can't get any threat. Another guy who possibly could threaten the Putin's power was Girkin, who is responsible for shooting down the Malaysian Boeing MH717, and he's now currently in Russian jail. So unfortunately, I don't see any potential rebellion leaders across the Russian army. But as many experts says, it doesn't mean that there is no one. Hopefully there are some, and we can just show, we can just see in time whether another kind of rebellion would appear in Russia. And Sasha, you've said about that Palenitsa drone. I've really quickly found a short video about it, so if you want, we can just watch it right now, because the naming of this drone is rocket drone is really amazing, because for Russians it's really hard to spell Palenitsa, and even during the start of invasion, when it was a kind of identifying whether it's fellow or foe, because Russians couldn't spell Palenitsa, and they were actually shot after it, and it was like a word to prove that you're really Ukrainian and can speak Ukrainian, because this word can correctly be spoken mostly by Ukrainians. So let's watch this video. Mark, please.
Ivan, as I remember, when I was a kid in Odessa many years ago, Palenitsa was a bread. It's a white round bread, very tasty, and it was a little bit more expensive than others. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, it's a bread, and really tasty. But now it's also named for a new ultimate new rocket drone, which Russians are so afraid of, and they can't spell its name correctly. So it's a couple fun in this case. Let's watch the video. Mark, please.
And knows the word Palenitsa. It refers to a type of bread. It is used to distinguish Russians. Due to differences in language, they cannot pronounce it correctly. But now they will have to learn this word from a completely different perspective. The state has launched a grant program for private rocket projects, invested in state design bureaus, and implemented deregulation to stimulate this industry. And here are the first results. Introducing Palenitsa, the first Ukrainian long-range rocket drone. Most of its technical characteristics are classified to avoid revealing capabilities to the enemy. However, we have learned a few details. 24 Russian military airfields are within its strike range. The production team consists of specialists from various fields, including people who had never worked with defense technologies, but due to enemy aggression, took up the development of Palenitsa. The work involved two aspects unusual for military industry. The first is the pace. It was developed in just a year and a half. To achieve this, the team worked without days off or vacations throughout the whole period. Their motivation was solid. The longer the delay, the more peaceful Ukrainians die. The second aspect is that the developers did not consider the project's profitability, which is common in the defense sector. Their only priorities are reliability and effectiveness. The structural features are classified. Well, almost. The Palenitsa will be launched from a ground platform. It uses a turbojet engine. It is equipped with electronic countermeasures. The rocket drone is connected to a satellite and therefore knows its exact location. If the connection is lost, there are other systems to keep it on the required trajectory. And what about the price and number of rocket drones? Modern systems cost millions of dollars per launch. Here, the cost is much lower than its counterparts. Moreover, the work on cutting the cost and increasing production is ongoing. Why is this so important? In the 2.5 years of full-scale war, Russia has launched over 43,000 various types of missiles and glide bombs at Ukraine. It still dominates the air. Yet the Americans and the Brits still do not allow the use of their ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles against Russian airfields, where carriers of missiles and heavy aerial bombs are based. So Ukraine is looking for its own response. Real Russian air bases catch fire from Ukrainian drone raids more and more often. Just on the night of August 14th, military airfields Halina, Savasleika, Borisogledsk, and Baltimore were hit. On August 21st, a radio reconnaissance center and an airport near Moscow, as well as the Millerovo air base. News of drone attacks on Russia is now almost daily. Sounds good, but rocket drones are better. They fly faster and carry a larger warhead. So Russian airfields, be ready. The goal of the Palynytsia is to destroy the enemy's offensive potential, and to do it on their territory. The first Ukrainian long-range rocket drone, Palynytsia.
Fantastic.
Great. It's funny they use a rocket drone because any rocket could be considered a drone just as well.
That's very the use of that word to use it to distinguish Russians from Ukrainians. That is a very interesting and very clever trick, because it reminds me of what American soldiers in the Pacific used for against the Japanese, where they had when they were trying to interrogate or figure out if the person was Japanese or not, they had them try to pronounce the phrase "Kayla lilies." Japanese cannot pronounce L or P, so if you had some Japanese trying to say "Kayla lilies," it came out "Kara riris."
Mm-hmm.
They cannot pronounce, so it's dead giveaway.
Jonathan, during Second World War, after Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, in New York City, there was a document which advised people how to distinguish Japanese from Chinese and what's the difference between them. So if there was a little guy who is dressed in a working robe and goes quickly somewhere, most likely it's Chinese. Now, if he's well dressed and he is not hurried up and he walks slower, then it must be Japanese. So you can go and arrest him and so on.
Considering the upcoming war with China, it would be nice to
dig that one up. Yeah,
how to distinguish Chinese from Japanese, because Japan is now ally of the United States and China.
It was
one of the major enemies.
It was part of discussion how in Western Europe, and there are a lot of now people from hiding or escaping the war from Ukraine, and there are also Russians. A lot of Russians now moved into Western Europe. So they were trying to figure out how to distinguish between Ukrainian people and Russian people, because they look about the same, and nobody knows Russian or Ukrainian language to distinguish what they speak. And a lot of Ukrainians are using Russian anyway. So they couldn't come up with any recommendations.
I can give you one recommendation.
Okay.
Just ask them a question. Putin, Ukrainian will answer Huilo, and the Russians will answer he's a great leader.
That's a good one.
Ukrainian might answer Svolich.
The word Huilo in Ukrainian
is typically Ukrainian description. Actually, it was. It's coming back from 2014 when he annexed Crimea and Donbass atrocities. And I think it's people, first it happened in Kharkiv. There was
it appeared in Kharkiv. It was this short song, Putin Huilo, la 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 la
Yes,
la
that's
la,
right.
was invented by football fans in Kharkiv.
Absolutely. You're absolutely
probably that's one of the reasons why Putin is so angry in Kharkiv and strikes it almost every day, because he hates the citizens of Kharkiv, the population, because of that joke, which is more than 10 years old.
Well, here's a good one for you to close things out. The very name Putin. When my mother heard the name that Russia's new president was named Putin, she started laughing. And why? Because she's from the southern United States, and in the south in the United States, the word Putin is a southern slang term which means passing gas. So she said, his name is Putin. She just started laughing like she always giggled whenever she heard his name.
Yeah, a lot of scientists, they were trying to find some Finnish word similar to Putin, and maybe he has some, and he's partially at least coming from Finland, but they couldn't really find anything decisive. They were getting closer, but then they said that maybe their investigation was cut short by by Putin's secret service or something like this, that it was no longer required. Anyway, I think we covered a lot of ground today. I thank you very much for today's program, and looking forward to see you on Friday, same place, same time, and hopefully we'll have even better news to talk about.
Things are all heading in the right direction.
Yes, so far it's brilliant. Thank you so much again, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.